the gavel does not always fall on a courtroom. Sometimes, it falls on a career. Sometimes, it falls on a legacy. And sometimes, it falls on a man's soul. When you hear the name Clifton Powell, if you are a fan of classic cinema, you do not think of a defendant. You think of the muscle. You think of the menace. You think of the laugh. You think of Pinky in Friday, or the terrifying yet smooth Debo in Next Friday. But the narrative we are trapped in today is not a script. There is no director yelling cut to save the protagonist. According to the records we have reviewed, the sentence for this particular Clifton Powell, specifically regarding his legal standing in a major federal case, has been finalized. It is, to use the parlance of our title, final. But is the goodbye forever a tragedy, a relief, or simply a man finally telling the truth? To understand the weight of a final judgment, you have to look past the flashing cameras of Hollywood and into the cold, fluorescent lights of the United States Court of Appeals. This is a story about two different men sharing the same famous name, and yet, in a strange twist of fate, their lives mirror the exact same struggle, the fight against a system that has already decided your fate. On May 18, 1982, a decision was handed down by the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit in the case of Powell v. Shopko Laurel Company. The appellant, Clifton Powell, had walked into a shopping center in Laurel, Maryland, and walked out a victim of a brutal assault by a security guard. He sought justice under the Civil Rights Act, but the court delivered a devastating blow. The court ruled that a private corporation could not be held liable under the doctrine of respondeat superior for the violent actions of its employee, even if that employee was acting as a state-commissioned special police officer. That was the legal sentence. It was a ruling that stripped away the opportunity for financial recovery, leaving a man battered and with no entity to sue but an individual security guard with empty pockets. It was a final judgment. But 40 years later, a different Clifton Powell, the actor, is facing a different kind of finality. In the winter of 2026, at the age of 69, sitting for a podcast interview, the actor dropped a bomb that shook the core of his fanbase. He confessed that he is just now learning how to love. For a man who played the ultimate tough guy, this admission of vulnerability is his own sentencing hearing. The goodbye forever we are witnessing is not a death, but the death of a persona. It is the ego of Clifton Powell being handcuffed by the truth. For decades, audiences assumed that Clifton Powell, the actor from Menace to Society, Dead Presidents, and Rush Hour, was living the high life. The man was everywhere. He worked constantly. He played gangsters, preachers, and cops. He had the face of a man who had seen it all and survived it all. But the hints of a coming crash were always there, buried in legal footnotes and small-town news reports. Before he was a star, there was the case of matter of Powell versus City of Newburgh in 2001. A different Clifton Powell, a motor equipment operator, lost his job after a random drug test came back positive for cocaine. The court records show a notice of discipline and determination that was upheld by the Supreme Court of New York, Appellate Division. It was a quiet fall from grace for a public servant. Meanwhile, the actor was hiding his own humiliations. In a recent interview with Black Enterprise, Powell revealed a secret he had kept for decades. "I really didn't start making money until I was almost in, my early 50s, he admitted. He recalled driving a scooter or a Ford Festiva to movie sets, terrified that his co-stars would see him. "I've been left at clubs because I didn't have money. Then those people want to circle back when you're rich." The hint was always there in his performances, that raw edge of desperation. He wasn't acting, he was hungry. The system wasn't a shopping center guard beating him down, it was Hollywood's colorism and poverty. He noted specifically the barriers of being broke and poor and black and dark. The tension in a courtroom is thickest right before the verdict is read. For Clifton Powell, that tension peaked in 2008. Just as his career was finally heating up, his life collapsed. In an exclusive interview with Vlad TV in April 2026, Powell detailed the cataclysm. "I became homeless at 52 after my divorce," he stated. This is the moment the character breaks. Imagine it, a man who defined street credibility on screen, a man who made millions of people laugh and fear him, sleeping in his truck. He was pulled over by police for driving with a fake registration. He was, for all intents and purposes, invisible. We are born into 450 years of post-slavery PTSD, he later argued on a heated podcast, trying to explain his generational trauma. The tension here is between the exterior and the interior. To the world, he was the guy who stole the bike from the kid in Friday. To himself, he was a failure. He admitted that the collapse of his marriage was his fault. He praised his ex-wife while taking the blame for not knowing how to handle fame, money, or commitment. Simultaneously, the legal tension for the other Clifton Powells reached a fever pitch. As of 2026, a separate legal battle involving a nonprofit CEO named Amir Clayton Powell, unrelated to the actor, saw a federal court back an employer who fired an executive over a security clearance failure. And in the financial world, Jerome Powell, no relation, was fighting to keep his job at the Federal Reserve, facing criminal investigations and political attacks. It seems the name Powell was trapped in a vortex of judgment. But for our subject, the actor, the tension was internal. Could he survive the fall? The gavel finally came down, not in a court of law, but in a podcast studio. Clifton Powell broke down. He cried. He is 69 years old, and he told the world, "I've just learned how to love." This is the emotional break of the script. For a black man of his generation, raised on stoicism and survival, admitting you don't know how to love is the equivalent of a guilty plea. He described the loneliness of his journey. He was surrounded by people in Hollywood, but he was utterly alone. "I've been left at clubs because I didn't have money," he repeated, the sting of the memory still fresh. The emotional climax here is the realization that the sentence he served wasn't jail time, it was the prison of his own ego. He spent decades playing the tough guy because he thought that was the only way to survive in the industry. He said he felt shame driving a cheap car while being recognized as a star. That shame built walls. Those walls cost him his marriage and his home. In the 1982 legal case, Powell v. Shopko, the court's decision was sterile. We affirm the district court's judgment. There was no emotion for the man who got hit in the head with a slapjack. The system moved on. In 2026, Clifton Powell is refusing to let the system move on without him speaking his truth. The emotional break isn't just sadness, it is the catharsis of admission. "It's not your mother's fault, it's not your father's fault," he argued, but then he accepted that the accountability lies with himself. Here is the truth that the title sentence is final obscures: Clifton Powell is not dead. He is not in prison. He is, by all accounts, working and breathing. So why goodbye forever? Because the character of Clifton Powell, the invincible, unshakable, stone-faced gangster, has been sentenced to death. And the man himself is holding the switch. The truth is that the federal ruling of 1982 and the personal turmoil of 2026 are connected by a thread of systemic indifference. In 1982, the court told a black man that he could not sue a corporation for a guard beating him, because the corporation didn't cause the deprivation, the individual did. It was a legal loophole that prioritized corporate structure over human injury. Similarly, the Hollywood system told Clifton Powell that his look was valuable, but his comfort was not. He was paid in exposure 4 years. He was told to be grateful just to be in the room. The truth is also about the nature of finality. In the City of Newburgh case, the judgment was confirmed and the proceeding is dismissed on the merits, with costs. That was an end. For Clifton Powell the actor, the end of his acting life, or at least his ego-driven life, is a beginning. In his interview with The Art of Dialogue, he stopped making excuses. He stopped blaming colorism for his failures and instead noted that while it was a barrier, his own refusal to quit was the bridge. "You can't put a timeframe on this," he advised young actors. "You just gotta do your work." That is the truth. The sentence is final. The struggling actor is gone. The homeless divorcee is gone. The man left at the club is gone. In their place is a 69-year-old elder who admits he is a beginner at love. We started with a legal verdict from 1982, where Clifton Powell lost his right to sue a corporation. That judgment stands. It is final. But here is the impact ending: Clifton Powell has won the war that matters. He survived the streets of Laurel, Maryland. He survived the poverty of the acting grind. He survived a divorce and homelessness. He survived the PTSD of 450 years. The goodbye forever is for the fans who can't separate the man from the myth. If you are looking for Debo, he is gone. If you are looking for Pinky, he has left the building. Powell revealed that he finally learned that you cannot put a timeframe on life. You cannot rush the healing. In the farewell speech of Secretary of State Colin Powell, another famous Powell, a different context, he left the world with a message: don't look for wars. He warned against cockiness. Clifton Powell, the actor, is finally listening to that advice. He is ending the war within himself. The Fourth Circuit Court signed off on their decision decades ago. Today, Clifton Powell signs off on his own past. The sentence is final. The goodbye is forever. But for the first time in his life, he is free to say hello to peace.